In this video, I'll continue the discussion I began in the last one about how God saves us by giving us purpose and meaning in life. As a teenager, I was involved in Boy Scouts. I loved camping and hiking. There was something freeing about being in nature. I had advanced in rank and was close to becoming an Eagle Scout when our troop went on its yearly camping trip to Stansbury Island on the Great Salt Lake. This happened shortly after learning that God had a purpose for me. On this trip, I pitched a tent on the outskirts of the troop's camp, and shortly thereafter, all of the outcasts in the troop came and pitched their tents near mine, and that's when I got an idea. You see, the patrols in our troop were formed yearly. The troop would elect the kids who would be the patrol leaders. Then the patrol leaders would pick the kids they wanted in their patrol, like kids who are choosing sides in a game. The kids who camped near me were the ones who were always picked last, the misfits and outcasts of the troop. I went to the home of the scoutmaster afterwards and pitched my idea to him. I explained, I'm the highest ranking scout in the troop, but I've never been elected to be a patrol leader because I'm not popular enough. I told him about the other kids that were the outcasts in the troop, and I said, make me their patrol leader and let these kids be in my patrol. I'll make sure they feel included instead of left out. He agreed to give me a chance to do this, and thus the Mole Patrol was born. Every week I met with these underdog kids over whom I had been given responsibility. I worked with them on various activities that helped them advance in their scouting ranks. We planned and executed hikes, camping trips, and other activities together, and we wound up having a lot of fun. In the process of helping these kids, I forgot about my own problem. I learned for myself the truth that losing one's life in the service of others, one will find it. In fact, I coined a motto at the time that has guided me in life. I was not born into this world to be loved. I was born into this world to love others. As an adult, I continue to find myself naturally drawn to helping others. If I'm feeling down, I always know that I can find someone who is worse off than I am. And as I seek to help them, I help myself. As I seek to heal others, I am healed myself. It's the basic law of sowing and reaping. What I give away comes back to me multiplied. That was part of the life mission that God began to unfold to me, but there was more. I had to learn one more merit badge to become an Eagle Scout. It was the Nature Merit Badge, and I'd been putting it off because everyone told me it was hard. To get it, you had to pick 2 categories of natural things to study. As I remember, the choices were mammals, birds, reptiles, plants, and rocks. I picked plants and rocks because I figured they wouldn't run away while you were trying to look them up in a book. The first plant I identified was yarrow. One of my field guides included information about how Native people had used these plants. Yarrow had been used for colds, fever, stomach and kidney problems, and the dried leaves to help stop bleeding and heal wounds. They had also been chewed to relieve toothache. I wondered how one plant could possibly help heal so many different health problems, which started me to become fascinated with edible and medicinal plants. Sometime later, when I was on a camping trip with my mole patrol, we encountered a patch of stinging nettle. I knew it was edible, so I decided to gather some. We cooked it and ate it. It was similar to the flavor to beet greens or spinach, and I thought it tasted actually pretty good. And the experience gave me a sense of satisfaction. I had successfully identified and used a wild food. Later that day, I had my second major encounter with the divine, an experience which would further unfold my life's purpose. I was sitting on a rock on top of a hill near camp. You could see down the canyon to Salt Lake Valley where I lived. And as I sat there, I began to look around and notice the plants I'd been learning to identify. I remember thinking how Native people had eaten that one, used that one for dye, used this one for medicine, used that one to make fiber or thread. And as I was taking inventory of what I learned, that same voice that spoke to me when I was depressed spoke again. This time it asked me a question. If you were a loving God, wouldn't you have put everything naturally on the face of the earth to take care of your children? I thought about all the people who had lived on earth prior to the discoveries of modern medicine. And I thought about all the people currently living in the world who had no access to modern medicine. And I decided that if God had infinite foreknowledge of the problems we would face in this life, if I were a loving God, I would have put a remedy on the earth for every disease mankind would be afflicted with that they could gather and use to heal themselves for free. The voice spoke again and said, "That's correct." Then it said, And what will you do when the lights go out? That was when I had my first waking vision. For those of you who don't know what that means, I'll tell you what I've experienced on the rare occasions God has given me a vision. It's like you're in a dream, except you're wide awake. Clear, vivid images not only come to your mind, but it's like you're not just seeing them. It's like you're in a dream, like you're standing in the images and you're present with them. It's very intense and not easy to forget. In this vision, I saw the electrical grid collapse. There was no power. I saw a big machine doctors were using for diagnosis. At the time, I thought it was some sort of X-ray machine, but years later, when I saw a picture of an MRI machine, I realized that that was what I had seen. Anyway, the MRI and all the other electrical diagnostic equipment had stopped working, plus the supply of drugs had been disrupted, so none of the medicines that were being used were available. People were sick and injured, and there was little medical doctors could do to help them. The scenes closed, and I was back on the hilltop, overlooking the valley. The experience was vivid, real, not like the pictures that come to mind when you're imagining something. In fact, it feels more real than reality. This experience is what moved me into my lifelong career of learning about herbs and natural medicine. But back to the purpose of this video. I've come to believe that everybody has a life purpose. We're all here for a reason. God has a plan for each of us. He has given each of us talents, which we can use to bless the lives of others if we choose to do so. But we first have to shift our focus away from our selfish concern for ourselves and begin to desire to lift those around us. That's part of how God saves us, by revealing our life purpose and putting us on the path of service. So we plant the seeds that will reap us a crop of happiness, joy, and peace. And that leads me back to the story of the Mole Patrol. I led this group of misfits for about a year. Many of these kids rose in the ranks of scouting. Some who had been inactive in church began to attend regularly. God was helping me to save them. At that point, however, the scoutmaster came to me and said the kids in my patrol were now leaders in scouts, having a lot more rank advancement and experience than most of the other kids in the troop. He wanted to disband the Mole Patrol and allow these kids to become part of the rest of the troop. He thought they could influence the rest to advance in rank. I told him I didn't think it would work, but he did it anyway. Shortly after our patrol broke up, many of these kids returned to their outcast status. Many of them stopped coming to scouts and to church. It was disheartening to me at the time, but we often don't see the big picture of how our efforts pay off in the long run. A few years ago, I went to a reunion of young people who were living in our area at the time when I had my Mole Patrol. And many of the kids from my patrol, now adults of course, were there. All of them sought me out, sat at the table I was at, and told me how much our time together in the Mole Patrol had been a positive influence in their lives. One of them had a son with a disability who was now in scouting and being picked on. He said, "I wish my son had a Mole Patrol." When God starts guiding the course of our life, as I know he did for me during this time, we never know how far-reaching the effects we'll have on others will be. The joy you feel when you realize that your efforts genuinely helped other people is one of the best feelings you'll ever have in life. It's the rewarding crop you reap from the seeds you planted many years before. This is why I have stressed that salvation is not just rescuing us from a future peril, or even from the troubles we have in this life, like poverty or sickness. It's really about delivering us from the empty, meaningless existence that is the core of a godless life. That's part of the salvation Jesus offers. But as I've heard a TV huckster say when trying to sell a product, wait, there's more. There's a lot of other ways in which Jesus can help save us in this life, which I'm going to share in future videos. And until then, God bless. If you found this video helpful, please hit the like button and share it with those who may also need to hear this message. You can also subscribe to my channel in order to get future videos in this series.